Good job today, man. One at a time, and we'll get the job done. Y'all know what to say. On three. 1, 2, 3.
And the home of the Jets.
What is going on, everybody? A special Sunday night draft preview edition of Let's Talk Jets. And this is a guy that I've talked to. We talked about this earlier. To Green Bean, I've talked to you, and I follow you on X. And, dude, Dom, I think your content is awesome, dude, because in this day and age, people like a lot of draft analysis. A lot of people regurgitate stuff or they repeat what they heard from somebody else, but you put the work in. You have your own genuine, unique takes. You back it up with what you think, your insight. And I think it's awesome. So I'm excited about this show, man. I appreciate your time today.
Tyson, I'm glad we finally got to get on a show and chop it up a little bit, man. My pleasure. And the honor's all mine, dude, for real.
No, dude, your draft analyst for Talking Jets. Those guys, you guys are everybody's crushing content, man. But like this time of year is so crazy because there's a lot of smoke, smoke screens out there, and who's believing who believes what, and how they're fit as a system. And the Jets are interesting because it's a whole new regime, so we can kind of anticipate what they want, but we don't know. But what we do know is they have a lot of holes to fill in a shorter period of time, and not a lot of draft picks. So, before we talk draft, what is your assessment of their free agency class? Because
here's my assessment, and I've had this conversation with a ton of people, as I'm sure any Jet fan has. Like, people that are ready to go jump off a bridge because of the guys that were signed. Like, I don't know. Like, I guess my expectations for this offseason, especially in free agency, was always tempered. Like, I didn't expect them to go big fish hunting. I expected them to shop at Walmart instead of Chanel, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
I don't know much about a lot of the guys, if I'm being 100% transparent. I know Cisco's a good player. I know he's young, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know that the kid Stevens, he can't, he had a bad season last year, but he's got he's got one really, really good skill set that was kind of not utilized in Baltimore in his press man coverage. And he's young. There seems to be an ongoing theme, with the exception of maybe Myers, who's 29 years old, the backup center. They wanted to, they needed to infuse some youth into this roster, right? 2 years of the Aaron Rodgers saga and really pushing your chips in the middle and trying to maximize a defense that was top 10 while you had Aaron Rodgers, so on and so forth. You did what you had to do. You got a little bit older. You brought in those grizzled veterans, and it didn't work. And now the new regime is kind of resetting. So they're getting younger. They're getting guys that although we might not know about them, they're not popping off the stat sheets or their TV screens for that much. They're really, most of the guys that we brought in, including Fields, is really kind of low risk and high reward, right? Whatever you have, you bring you infuse the team with some youth, and you infuse the team with some guys whose floors won't be, like Zach Wilson low, and the ceilings might not be Josh Allen high. But if you get something out of these guys, they're relatively young. You're going to find out if they can be foundation pieces as you kind of retool and rebuild into 2026. Because I don't know how you feel, Tyson. I get shit for this all the time. Crap, excuse my language.
You can curse, dude. We go fly here.
All right. So I get shit for this all the time. Like, anyone who wanted to believe that this really wasn't a rebuild, I don't know, man. This is a rebuild. It's just not a rebuild completely bringing it down all the way to the studs, because you got some foundation pieces, right?
Yep.
You got some foundation pieces. I think the real work's going to come into 26. So Joe Douglas and the way that he structured his contracts, and with the older guys, veterans, and so on and so forth, there was a lot of voids that we needed to fill. It's not going to be fixed in one off season. it's just not going to be fixed in one free agency and draft period. There's still going to be guys. So go and take some low risk and high reward shots. See if it works out. See if Cisco works out. See if he can earn a second contract. He'll only be 25. You know what I mean? Like the guys like that. I'm all for it in the sense that to me I understand what they were trying to do without without going full bore, full send Mike Maccagnan and spending at the top of the market, paying the jet tax, and then 2 years from now being in cap hell.
Yeah, well, they just did that. They swung big with Aaron Rodgers. They swung the Hassan Reddicks. They made all these splashy moves. Yep. And at some point, you got to pay for those moves. And now you're paying for it now. And there's different ways to go about doing it. You keep putting Band-Aids on thing, rip the Band-Aids off, and address it kind of bare bones. What they're kind of doing here, like, I don't think it is a rebuild. It's not a full rebuild, like you said. Like,
correct.
What Joe Douglas inherited was a complete disaster.
Correct.
They're inheriting, you have core pieces here as long as you keep some of them. So there is potential here, but you got to make savvy moves. I was personally hoping for a little bit more splash at wide receiver, but they didn't do that. They're going the cheaper route, Josh Reynolds and everything. But I'm like, okay. So the way I'm looking at this now is they're currently handling this is they're putting a premium on the draft and on coaching.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have a lot of young guys with potential. Potential is only good if you maximize it, and you got to
right.
guys up. And you've got very inexperienced staff in terms of like a lot of first-time guys in their position. Fine, first-time general manager drafting these guys. They seem to be in lockstep where they know what they want. They know how they want to go about doing it. So now you go, okay, here we are in the draft where, I think at this point we all know the holes. You want a right tackle, you need a tight end, you need a wide receiver, you need all these different things. And you have the 7th pick in the draft, which is creating all kinds of debates like what's the best value. Signing Justin Fields takes the quarterback out of the equation for me altogether. I don't believe in this Jackson Dart stuff. Not happening. You want to talk 3rd, 4th round flyer on somebody, I can deal with that. Is that where you are with quarterback? Like,
yeah, for us, for our roster, I kind of agree with you. I think all the noise around the Jets being in the quarterback market at the top of the draft was just that noise. Like you talked about it when we started the show. You got to be able to navigate through what's real and what's not. What's the smoke. So you if you start drumming up, and whether it's the Jets or whether it's whomever, you start to drum up some noise that hey, maybe there is interest. You just plant seeds in people's ears where if somebody, like New Orleans, for instance, they're at 9 and maybe they have decided that they need to focus on a quarterback, right? Because they got Derek Carr for one more year. That team and their financial
100%.
situation's a mess every year. So maybe you drop enough hints and you plant enough seeds and they're willing to strike and move a deal to go get their guy. I don't know. But that's where I stand with quarterback. I'm fine if they take a shot. I wouldn't use a day 1 pick on one. I probably wouldn't use I wouldn't use a round 1 or a round 2 pick on a quarterback here. Like you said, there's just so many holes that I think you got to come away in the first 3 rounds with a guy who has potential stud ability and 2 good starters. And if you do that, if you do that, I think that obviously we won't know for 3-4 years what happens to this class, but if you can nail that in day 1 and 2, is get a guy who has the potential to be really, really good and 2 good starting contributors, I think you're success. And then whatever happens from in rounds 4 through 7, you want to take a shot, then go for it, man.
Now, who are some of the quarterbacks you would consider in the later rounds? It's kind of hard based on we don't know what Tanner Engstrand's offense is, but if you're thinking, to me, it's like thinking Justin Fields. I'm thinking, Jalen Milroe. You think like you could think of, you're trying to kind of match what would be a plug and not kind of fit into this. Yeah. Are you thinking that? And you have Tyler Shough, who I like, but it's like, all right, he's not probably the prototypical guy for this offense.
Yeah. So there's the guys that I like, and then the guys that I'm trying to read the tea leaves behind. Like the Jets have spent a lot of time with Kyle McCord from Syracuse. They've met with him numerous times. They met with him at the Combine. They met with him at the Pro Day. They had a workout with him at the Pro Day. The same thing with Quinn Ewers from Texas, which is interesting. There's multiple meetings and private workouts. Does that mean like, is that a lock that they're going to take him? No, it's not. But, that's the reading between the tea leaf stuff. They've also brought in a couple guys. I want to bring up their names real quick. So I don't butcher them because they're not regular household names, but I try my best to track all the draft prospects that the Jets meet with throughout the offseason, and they've recently brought in Jordan McLeod, who, listen, I'm probably about 250 prospects in at this point. It's probably not going to be much more. I can tell you, I didn't watch zero tape on Jordan McLeod, but they went to his pro day, Texas State. They went to his pro day. They worked him out. There's been some other small school quarterbacks. They have a top 30 visit with Cam Miller, who's a run first quarterback from North Dakota State. He's only about 5'10", 195 pounds, but they thought highly enough to bring in to bring him in for a top 30 visit. Now, does that mean he's draftable? No, they could try to get a feel for him and see if he's a guy that they want to, prioritize once the undrafted free agency period starts.
Right.
So there are some quarterbacks that they're talking to. For me, I tend to think along the lines of what you're thinking. Like, all right, you have Tyrod Taylor. Yeah, I mean, you have Justin Fields, you have Tyrod Taylor. They're both, legit dual threat quarterbacks. I mean, Justin Fields much more than Tyrod Taylor at this point. Tyrod's 35, 36 years old. To me, that progression might be Jalen Milroe. And I happen to really like Jalen Milroe. I graded him out. He's my third graded quarterback in this class. But he's not ready, right? Mm-hmm. So, am I willing to spend a second or third round pick on him? Me personally, I'm probably not, but I think that's what it'll cost at absolute worst. I still think that there's teams that are gonna, reach for him in the top 40 picks, whether or not it's at the end of the first round, so you get the 5th round option on him, or the beginning of the second. The teams that miss out on one of the two big quarterbacks in this class, that he might go quick. But yeah, I mean, I like that progression. I mean, I think Kyle McCord's a good quarterback. I think he's got really good pocket presence. I think he's got a strong arm. It's not elite, but it's very good. He can make all the throws. But you're gonna have to protect him really well. Like he's not gonna give you much off platform or anything like that. He's not, the athletic upside is really, really capped on him. So I think that maybe, in a pinch, maybe not year one, but in a pinch, he could be one of those guys who comes in and holds down the fort while your quarterback's injured and maybe go 500. I don't know if he's got like true starter or franchise talent.
Yeah. So
at that point, like, I don't know, like, is it worth it? If you want to take a guy and roll the dice, that's fine. If you want to see what you have in the kid from Florida State last year, that's fine too.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot to me. I'm willing to wait. Like you have hopes in Justin Fields. It's and you have basically a 2-year window with him to see out what he can do. And like I said, if you took for example, Jalen Milroe in the 4th round, you said you're going to sit. You got Tyrod, you got Justin Fields. You're not going to see the field this year unless complete, 3 and 13, 3 and 14 kind of season. You're like things completely out of haywire, and he could literally sit back and learn and develop the right way, which is perfect. So then you look at what's in front of the quarterback. It's the offensive line where you have 4/5 of it there. Everybody, and they announced today that AVT will be playing right guard, which is fine. Now you need a right tackle, and then you come to the draft where it's like let the arguments begin, because now it's like you have Membu, you have Will Campbell, or do you say we go a different direction? But I will say this: based on the way the Jets are currently constructed, my number 7 pick is going to be offensive side of the ball. I'm not going to go defense. I understand. Well, this like it's just such a need for me where either I want a playmaker or a guy that can protect Justin Fields. Yeah. Are you in that, or can you be swayed to go defense at 7?
Well, I'll say this: I'm 1,000% in the same camp as you. As a matter of fact, if I had my druthers, if I was making the calls, I'd probably go offense rounds 1, 2, and 3.
Me too.
Backload the defense, but I think you can make an argument for any position. I mean, this is just the status of the roster. It is what it is. I'm not saying it, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but you could make an argument for any positional group, maybe outside of cornerback, because that room looks pretty solid right now. Especially you're paying Brandon Stevens. You're already paying Michael Carter. You assume they're going to pay Sauce, whether it's now or this summer. Yep. And then you got 2 younger guys in JBC and Quantez Stiggers, who are depth pieces, and see what happens with them. Yeah. So outside of cornerback and quarterback, which I already said I wouldn't spend the number 7 pick overall, I think you can make an argument for anything. And that includes edge, that includes defensive line, that includes offensive line, that includes wide receiver. The roster is just pretty, in pretty bad shape. But if I had my druthers, I'm with you. I think I load up on the offense and really trust that Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilks and that defensive side can take these guys and really coach them up in rounds 4 through 7, because I think you need to build some depth. they've got some, they've addressed some of the starting holes, right? They re-signed Jamie and Sherwood. You brought in Stevens. Whether or not you like Brandon Stevens, I mean, I didn't watch a lot of his film. I watched the same amount of highlights and got into some of it in Baltimore. And the one thing I noticed is that he's a completely different player when he's up being physical playing press man than he is when he's asked to play off zone, where he was really, really bad. So I think that I'm okay with, and you got Cisco in there. You re-signed Tony Adams, whether he ends up starting year one or whether he's a depth piece. I'm okay with spending day 3 on the defense and give me days 1 and 2 all offense.
And that's where I'm at, because I'm using my faith in Steve Wilkes and Aaron Glenn to say there's enough talent on defense where you can make it serviceable. You can compete on defense with what we have, but there's so much of concern on offense where that's got to be the priority, because you want Justin Fields to be the best he can be. Yeah. I don't want Justin Fields having nobody open, can't block. We've already seen that shit show before, year after year. Give him the best chance to succeed. So then if he doesn't, it's not our fault, it's his fault. You know what I'm saying? It's listen, we tried, man. We gave you playmakers, we gave you a good offensive line, we gave you a running game. You're still missing passes, can't complete. Then we know where you're at and we can move on. So then adding on offense, where do you stand in terms of the first round where you can go, everybody's, you can go Tyler Warren, you can go offensive line, you can go Ted McMillan. What is your preference there? And my biggest question is, how do you assess value over value? Is it if you get, in theory, your second best right tackle, depending who you think of Will Campbell or not, to the best tight end on the board, what's the value chart there? How do you assess that?
Yeah, so it's tough, because I'll say this, and you can't really. I know it's apples and oranges, so hear me out on this. The offensive tackle class last year was so far beyond talent, more talented than the class this year, and that includes the likes of the Membus and all that. Last year was just a really, really good tackle class. So in hindsight, and to all the Bowers boys out there, this is not, I knew Bowers was a good receiver. I knew he was going to be a good player in the league, so on and so forth. But I'm glad in hindsight that they locked up a left tackle last year. So you come into this year, right? And we talk about Membo, we talk about Campbell. I've graded since the summer, really since the fall, since I started getting into this film. I've kind of pegged, and way before the arm thing came into it, I kind of pegged Will Campbell to be more of an inside guy. I graded him out as an interior guy. I graded him out as a guard. So I don't know if he's going to be in the equation. I'll say this: I'll be shocked if he's in the equation for the Jets to come in and plug at right tackle. And it's not a knock on the players, 15th rated player on my entire board. So he's very good, but I just think his skill set, forget about his arm length, forget about his wingspan. I think his skill set is better suited inside. And, Muji came out today and said that AVT is going to be a guard. I don't know if I necessarily think that's the wisest decision, but that, that's for a different discussion. So, there's a possibility that you're going to have to choose between one of those, Membo and Tyler Warren. I don't necessarily think we will.
But I mean, to stop you real quick though, if that's the assessment you have, is there a chance? And I get this feeling more and more the more we talk about things. Is there a chance Membu's gone before 7 if people evaluate him as the best tackle in the class?
There's a chance. I guess there's a chance. I'll say this. I mean, and again, I'm in the minority on this, Tyson. I think there's a better chance that Warren's off the board before 7.
Really?
Yeah, I think that watch Jacksonville as a landing spot for him at 5. I could see that happening for sure. Just the way that the offensive mind in there, you got the 2 receivers on the outside that can really take the top off the defense. And what better way to give that availability to the wide receivers to, you keep plugging across the middle like death by 1,000 paper cuts, 5 yards, 6 yards with somebody like Warren in the middle, or Trevor Lawrence to Warren in the middle. You're going to bring a safety up, and that's just going to open up the outside. So I think that's a sneaky landing spot for him. Membo could be off the board at 4. He absolutely could. But the way it's looking like it's going to pan out, I mean, I would think it would be hard for the Patriots to pass on either Hunter or Carter if one of them fell to 4. I think to me that there's a clear tier of non-quarterbacks, and those 2 are well at the top. But yeah, I mean, listen, if Membo, I think there's 3 guys. I think it's going to be Warren, Membu, and Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. And though one of those three guys will ultimately, if the Jets stick at 7, one of those three guys will ultimately be the pick.
So now, what is your assessment of Warren? And this is like a hot topic for Jet fans because a lot of people wanted Brock Bowers last year.
Mhm.
He's not. He's probably the same resume, but like he fits many needs. Blocking tight end, great safety valve for Justin Fields. He can do a lot of really good things. Versatile as hell, can do all kinds of stuff. Wildcat and everything else, which is great. So he has a lot of value there in terms of what the Jets need as a playmaker in this offense, especially limited at wide receiver. You're like, wait,
Correct.
This is a big fit right here.
Yeah.
Would you rank him in terms of need and value at 7? Him over Membu?
I would. I
Yeah, me
would.
too.
I absolutely would. I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, he's versatile, right? He can help you in the run game. He can help you in line. Although he's not George Kittle as a blocker, that's something that I think can still develop. He's got the size. He's got the chops. 6'6", almost 260 pounds. He moves very well. Right. He's, for a guy that big, he's a super, super athlete. Can give you yards after the catch. Can line up in line, can line up as a big slot, can line up at H-back, fullback. Hell, you can even put him at quarterback and let him be the tush push quarterback. You know what I mean? He was a former quarterback before he went to Penn State. So he can do a little bit of everything. And Penn State utilized him that way. The knock on him, I think which is fair, is he's 23, and it really took him until 23 to kind of break out. He did more. I mean, he had like 48% or 47%, a ridiculous amount of target share in Penn State last year, and 100 and some odd receptions. And combined the other 4 years, I think he had like 30 receptions. So he's a very late bloomer. And in terms of being 23 and a late bloomer, he might already, I don't know how much more room there is to grow. That's a fair, that's a fair assessment. I mean, the analytical nerds tell you, a guy who has a late breakout age like that usually doesn't soar at the next level.
Right.
So what you see is what you get. But to me, I think the value of what he can bring to this offense all around in helping every facet of it, completely outweighs the maybe, quasi limited ceiling that he has. Like, he's a superb athlete. The guy loves football. Like, he's kind of old school, like wants to put his face mask in your chest and knock the shit out of you. And can help you in every, I mean, he can be that safety valve. He can be that, ultimately probably that number 2, number 3 weapon in an offense that has Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. And
that's like that mindset, that tenacity reminds me exactly what Aaron Glenn talks about, right? That's kind of like that, loves the game of football. It's physical, nasty, and you need that. That's a culture changer. That's the kind of element you want to bring into your team to kind of remove whatever was already there the last couple of years. So it makes a lot of sense. Now, the question is, if the Jets in theory go Membu at 7, which I wouldn't hate it. I'd understand it.
Yeah.
What's the tight end is still a huge hole. You have Ruckert, you have Smart, fine. Not the, I still want a legitimate talent there with a high ceiling.
Yeah.
What's the drop off after Warren? Because everybody keeps saying it's a very deep tight end class, but if you had to go round 2, there's still a couple guys there who's like, you know what, they're not Warren, but I'm still comfortable being very good playmakers. Or are you saying, you know what, fuck that, I have to go different position and go third or 4th round get tight end?
No, I think you can. It is a very deep and very diverse tight end class. There's tons of different types of guys there. Now, obviously Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan, I don't think he'll be there for the Jets at 42. I don't think that's an option. I think he's actually a little bit closer to Tyler Warren than the gap between 2 and 3. Yep. But that next tier, so I'd probably put Warren and Loveland pretty close behind. They're on their own tier. And then that next group of guys, you can make arguments anywhere from pick 42 in round 2 to round 3. And that's, in no specific order. Mason Taylor out of LSU, who is, super, super athletic, can really help you with the pass game still. And is a good blocker, just not, kind of in a phone booth or at the point of attack. He's not like a guy who's going to displace defensive linemen and so on and so forth. He's a guy that you might want to move in motion and have him kick out on an end or get out there and lead on a toss sweep or something like that in the second level on the flank. Like, he's a very efficient and willing blocker, just not a real people mover. But he can, he could do stuff. He could really help the pass game. Gunnar Helm out of Texas, another one. Very similar. I think he's a better inline blocker personally than Mason Taylor. Very underrated as a pass receiver. I think the NFL comp thing is crazy, but to me, I see him as like a Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews was a third round nobody. He was a second tight end taken in his own draft class, right?
Yeah.
They took a tight end. What was the guy's name? I forget his name anyway. From South Carolina in round 1. And then backed it up to have like that blocking tight end. Well, Mark Andrews really developed into an offensive weapon. I think that's what Gunnar Helm can do. And I don't know if you have to reach at the second round to get him. You might be able to get him in the third round, and that value is still there. Then you have like those true receiving type tight ends, those true big slots. And Harold Fannin led the nation in offensive production. Much more pass heavy, like that, much more pass heavy, runs a full route tree, just like a wide receiver. Not going to offer you much in line. Or Elijah Arroyo out of Miami, same exact thing. Much more of the Dalton Kincaid mode where you can move him around. He can play slot. He can even play, on the boundary. Can run routes as good as a wide receiver. Just not going to really offer you much as a blocker. And to me, I don't know what the Jets have right now. Like, to me, they have that in that kid that they signed as a free agent, Stone Smart from the Chargers, who's very, 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 very new to the position, very, very raw. He was a college quarterback. He transitioned to play tight end just here in the pros. He was actually Zach Kuntz quarterback at Old Dominion. Do you know that?
That's great. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. So now they're both on the same team anyhow, but he's a receiver first, and he's not going to offer you much in second. So I just don't know if that's the type of tight end that the Jets can really target since they've already spent, they already brought one in free agency. I think that Mason Taylor in round 2, I think that Gunnar Helm, even like a Terrence Ferguson in round 3, those are guys that I think can really come in and do a little bit of everything. Terrence Ferguson's a guy that kind of flies under the radar. I think he deserves to be in that, in that same tier with the Taylors and the Fannins and so on and so forth. He's really, really underrated. He's long, 80 something inch arms, like a ridiculous catch radius. He's going to be a guy that, is like, he's like a straight B+ student, does everything really, really good. Nothing is excellent.
Right.
The only thing that he does excellent is he just gets he's a ball magnet, man. The ball goes up, he goes up and gets it, especially in the red zone. Like, I could see him being a guy who, maybe he only caps out at 50 or 60 catches a season, but he's going to have double-digit touchdowns. He's going to have 12, 13 touchdowns in a year.
Sign me up tomorrow. I'm good with that.
Absolutely.
We haven't seen that shit in forever. So now what the opposite scenario is, if you go, say you go tight end at 7, say you go Tyler Warren, what's the drop off after Membu? Because, and it's like, then it's like your priority, like, to me, like we talked about earlier, like my first 3 picks, I'd love to be offense, wide receiver, tight end, tackle, in some kind of form like that. Now, if you do go tight end in round 1, then it's like, all right, is the tackle class deep where you feel comfortable? Or it's like, all right, there's a big drop off where now it's going to be kind of like a by committee kind of plan at right tackle because you don't really feel good at that guy being a plug and play kind of guy. Yeah.
So the class itself is really wonky because it's the first class in a while that, I can say wholeheartedly that there's no dead set true tackles in the class. There's a couple, like Josh Connerly out of Oregon. He's a left tackle. That's what he's going to play. He's a left tackle. Even guys like Membu, there's a lot of people that think that Membu might end up, might think he's a better guard than tackle, but I think he can hang a tackle, right? You got guys like Kelvin Banks and Josh Simmons, who are probably first. They'll be first rounders. They probably won't be there on the turn as we come on at 42. But again, there's questions. Well, Josh Simmons is coming off of a torn patella tendon, so that's his own, issue. But Kelvin Banks, a lot of people think that he might end up being a better guard. You can go down the line. Jonas Salvanea from Arizona, Ariante Ursary from Minnesota, Anthony Belton from North Carolina State. All these guys are second and third round tackles probably, but there's questions on if there be better tackles than better guards. So if you're not dead set that, and I'll just, like I said, I just use him as an example since I said him last, Anthony Belton. If you're not dead set that Anthony Belton can be a tackle and you're comfortable taking him in round 3, you better go get your tackle early in the first or second round,
Right.
to give competition. I mean, I don't know if Okorafor's, he's only getting $2 million. That's backup money. I'm sure he's been, they brought him in. At worst, it's depth. At best, you give him, you let him go into camp and let the best man win. So I think the right tackle, I think you can get away. I don't know if you have to take Membu, but you better be, their scouting department and the front office, Muji, better be comfortable with some of these guys who a lot of the professionals, a lot of the experts in here think that these guys are going to be possibly guards. You better be comfortable with them playing a tackle.
And is there a chance, like, we're kind of assuming a lot of things, like we're calling right tackle a hole, but we're also used to terrible offensive line coaching, terrible offensive line play, all this. Is there a chance that the Jets could say, what, as of today, we're comfortable with the competition at right tackle. Let's see what we have. Like, it's not for us, it's a priority in the draft. The Jets could say, it's not a priority for us. We have enough guys that we think one of these guys can hold the fort down for now. We'll deal with that maybe during training camp. Somebody gets cut, but this could be okay, and put the priority elsewhere. Wide receiver, tight end. Is there a world that could actually be true?
I would probably think not. If I'm being honest with you, I think that they got to bring in some. They got to bring in. Let me rephrase. I don't know what they really think about Carter Warren or Max Mitchell. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much exposure they have to him, but if they watch film on those guys last year, you know that they're bringing in some reinforcements. I think I would be more confident that they go to war with the wide receiver core that they have now with a late day 3 guy brought in than they go to war with the tackle room that they have now. Like I just can't get behind them saying, okay, Max Mitchell and Chuma, whatever his name, Okorafor, battle it out, Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just like I'm all about the offensive line. Like, it's a priority for me. Like, get 5 studs, have the same guys play together for the next 5 years, and I'd be happy as hell. But then you look at the wide receiver group, which has been my problem all offseason. It's been pissing me off. I know Muji said today they're trying to restructure Alan Lazard.
Yeah,
I think he's full of shit. I think what's going to happen is after June they get a much bigger cap savings. They cut him after June.
Yeah, $12 million.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's obvious. So you could try to restructure it. You can try to trade. You can talk all the things you want. If he's still here in June, he's not going to be here after June 1st. And so you have a huge hole at wide receiver. You have, Malachi Corley, no idea what he is. Garrett Wilson is on an island by himself at this point with a lot of just guys.
Yeah.
So then how do you look at the wide receiver class? Where some people love Ted McMillan, some people don't. Like his size, catch radius, all that stuff, but he's not a speedster. Like, how do you evaluate the draft class, especially at 7?
Yeah, I think Ted McMillan's a good player. I absolutely do. I think that Ted McMillan is a perfect complement to what Garrett Wilson is, right? He brings those aspects that Garrett doesn't. People who are concerned about Ted McMillan's speed doesn't, and I don't say this insultingly, I'm just speaking in general, probably didn't watch enough Ted McMillan. Like, if you watch him play, you knew that he was never going to be a speedster, right? Yeah. I mean, that's just not his game. Like, he just had to make sure that it wasn't ridiculous, like 4.7 slow. You know what I mean? But that's not his game. His game is done, above the rim, if you will. My question with Ted, and listen, the hands are ridiculous. The wow catches are going to come there. I think he needs to get more physical. And I think that my biggest concern with Ted McMillan is what he's going to do off of press man coverage. Like, even at Arizona, he ran 30% of his snaps in the slot where they forced his separation. I'm not saying that he can't separate, but he's just that he lacks that physical ability to just, be strong enough to get tough press man coverage off him. That's only going to get better as you get into the next level. So those are my concerns with Ted McMillan. But I think skill set wise, he complements Garrett the best. I think there's other guys that also have that skill set. Jaden Higgins from Iowa State is another, bigger wide receiver that I really like. Jack Bech from TCU, Trey Harris from Ole Miss. I don't think that Ted McMillan is the only true X build or X prototype that they have to get to complement Garrett. You can still go Armand Membu and still land one of these guys who are really good players and will complement Garrett Wilson real well. But you touched on it earlier as we started the show. We just don't know what Engstrand's going to be looking for, and we don't know what this offense is going to be. And is it going to be more so of a run-heavy scheme? Because if that's the case, how important is wide receiver 2?
Yep.
You know, if he's going to be option 4, how important, the fourth option behind, in this case, let's talk Tyler Warren, behind Garrett and Tyler Warren and Breece Hall and those other running backs, and the running back in Justin Fields, his run ability, that wide receiver 2 is kind of going to be an afterthought. So maybe that's not a priority for him. Maybe they're fine with having Allen Lazard there, who's a very good blocker in fairness, and can help. And can help spring some of that stuff in that run game. I don't know. Yeah,
and that's the thing where I think Tyler Warren could change a lot of things. Where it's like, all right, that, like you said, that need at wide receiver could go down a little bit because now you have Garrett Wilson, you have Breece Hall at backfield, you have Tyler Warren. Justin Fields runs, like there's only so many opportunities in this pass scheme to do things, and you have a lot of them filled. So it's like maybe it isn't. Then you hope that Malachi Corley is something, and you can get something out of Josh Reynolds, or like you're trying to find all pieces of the puzzle. And right now, we don't know what the puzzle is because we don't know what the offense is. We're trying to assume, like, you're kind of assuming maybe ground and pound, maybe more physical, like establish the run, and then like work in that. So it's like this is probably the most fascinating draft, I think, for the Jets, and just the top 7 picks because there's so many unknowns. There's so many variables where there's no like slam dunk guy, like we got to do this, we got to do that. You can pretty much, like you said earlier, you can argue about a lot of guys right now and have a good case for it.
You can argue about just about, like I said, any position outside of, for 7, any position outside of quarterback or cornerback, I think you can make a fair argument for.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now, how do you handle like a player like Breece Hall? Like a lot of these guys now, like Joe Douglas did one good thing. He had a lot of good young pieces in place that are now getting ready to get paid. Where you have Garrett, you got Sauce, you got Breece. Now Breece is a little different though. So how do you handle a guy like Breece? Is this like a year where you're like, you know what, get whatever you can out of him? Maybe you tag him next year. You maybe you prepared that he can walk in terms of like allocating your money, your cap space. Do you want to give money to a running back when you got to pay your maybe Jermaine Johnson or whoever else? How do you handle a running back spot?
Yeah, I listen, I'll preface this by saying that Breece Hall is my favorite player. Like, he's my favorite New York Jet. But you already hit the nail on the head, man. There's a lot of money that's going to be coming down the pike, whether it's Garrett and Sauce, maybe AVT gets another contract. I mean, he'll be 28 going on 29, really hasn't stayed healthy. But a decision might come if they're going to pay Garrett and Sauce, they might only be able to pay long term one of AVT, JJ, or Breece. So which one do you do? In my eyes, I mean, without having the season come before us, like Breece is probably last on that list, just because I think that the running back position is kind of expendable. Now, you want to tag him for a year, he'll still be young or so on and so forth. That's fine. But when we're talking about long-term contract, I just don't know if the positional value makes sense when you have so many other guys that are coming up that you're going to have to pay. And again, you're already paying Michael Carter, top of the market for a slot corner. You assume that Sauce is going to reset or at least come close to resetting the market. So that's a lot of money that you're divulging into the defensive backs right there. I just don't see it. So for me, I hope that this offense, I'm assuming Engstrand's going to have a lot of West Coast principles. I think that'll help Breece more. Yeah, I found that kind of switch or focus to the power gap scheme last year that they tried to do really didn't do Breece any justice. I think he's much more of a, like plant his foot and get vertical kind of guy. Like that outside zone scheme kind of works well for him. So I'd like to see him be used like that and then really reassess after the season. If you want to tag him, fine. But I don't know if I just don't see a long-term contract at the running back position for the Jets, considering all the other people that they're going to have to pay.
Now, an interesting player is Quincy Williams, where become a fan favorite, completely outplay his contract, playing at all-pro level, flies around, tenacious, kind of fits the Aaron Glenn mold.
Yeah.
But they just gave Jamin Sherwood a shitload of money to be the captain of the team, the guy, another speedster, big hitter. How do you handle Quincy Williams, who can be turning 30 years old, last year's contract? And to me, I keep saying, like, he can make an argument to walk into Muji's office and be like, listen, bro, I need a contract because I'm grossly underpaid. And based on the way free agency went, he's right. So how do you handle him?
I think that exactly that. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if a holdout, you don't see Quincy Williams, at a lot of the summer workouts and a lot of the camp. Like, I could see a holdout happening. there's grumblings, and again, this is just rumor stuff, not anything confirmed or anything like that. But like maybe they move him on draft day, right? Now, I don't see the point in it in the sense that if you're not going to sign him long term, that's fine. But now you're just creating another hole that you have to fill, right? Because it's not like you have like pristine depth all up and down the linebacker room, right? You got Zaire Barnes that you still don't know what he can do. You signed Jamin Davis, who's been cut by 2 teams now. So it's not like the depth is, it's not like the pipeline's filled and next guy up kind of thing. So, could they go young? Could they draft a linebacker in round 3 or 4 and then move Quincy and try to recoup that, that pick, another 4th rounder or something like that next year to kind of offset the 3rd rounder that we got to pay to Philly? Maybe. I guess it could happen. Maybe they restructure. Maybe they're going to have a lot of money in June. After Aaron's money comes off the book, after CJ's money comes off the book, after what we're assuming Alan Lazard's money coming off the book. After June 2nd, they're going to have some money. So maybe they restructure him and give him something like kind of front loaded, like, hey, listen, we're going to bring you up to speed this year. And then, we'll have like an option on it next year or something like that, which they probably won't see out. So I don't think that a long-term extension is coming. Although, I'd like to see it because, you become a fan of Quincy.
Yeah.
But you just can't pay everybody, right? If it comes down to that money has to be, kind of divvied out between Sauce and Garrett and AVT. Well, then, Quincy, thanks for your service, bro.
Yeah, and it's like, I think the Jets gained a lot of favor. Like, Muji gained a lot of favor by keeping Sherwood. I think Sherwood's a guy on the rise, respect the guy, team MVP. Like, all right, we're keeping one of our own. Yeah. If you find a way to keep Quincy for another year or two, like, all right, you're kind of like, all right, you can do it. But then if you don't, it's like, this is business. Like, there's only, like you said, there's only so many guys you can keep at the price tags they want. Correct. Without selling your soul and creating like how many high price linebackers can you have when you have no wide receivers or you have so now going back to the draft, is there a world where Shedeur Sanders can fall to 7? Because I think there's so much bullshit out there right now and it's a quarterback league. Everybody talks about him. Like everybody loves Cam Ward now. Everybody's like, Shedeur this, Shedeur that. And so is there a world that he actually could fall to 7 or no?
Listen, I would be hard pressed to see him get out. I think quarterback's going to go 1-2. I would see it very hard pressed to see if Cleveland doesn't take Shedeur that he gets by the Giants. I mean, listen, the Giants signed Jameis. They 2-year deal, but it's really a 1 year. It's a 1 year deal with that second year that they can get out of pretty scot free. They signed Russ. There's no long term thing. There's no long term plan in there.
No.
So. Do the Giants say no? Listen, those guys are on the hot seat. Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are their seats are warmer than they probably want to think about. So I don't know if passing on the quarterback there, whether it's Shedeur or not, whether they pass on. Well, actually, in this case, it would be Shedeur because Cam's not going to be there. I think that's probably the way that it's going to go. Is there a world that he can get to 7? I think it's very highly unlikely. Because even if they did, I think that the Raiders would probably take him at 6. And Geno, although they say they want Geno for the next 2-3 years, they might give him a contract for it. That's fine. That could go with Shedeur's timeline. You can have him in there for 2 years. And then at year 3, Geno's going to be 38. Because he's 35 now, right? 35, 36, 37. He'll be 37. Shedeur will be 24. Maybe that's when the baton gets handed off. So I would find it very, very hard to believe that Shedeur makes it to 7. But crazy things have happened, man. Crazy things have happened.
I think he's tailor-made for the Raiders. I think he's so made, like he'd be the perfect Raider. But I think you're right. I think the Giants, I don't understand the Giants plan at all. I think they're just desperate times, desperate measures with them. The Russ and Jameis, I think they're just whatever.
Well, I mean, they went all in on Stafford, and that didn't work. And then it looks like they pushed their chips to Rodgers, who I guess didn't want any part of it.
No, I mean you're going to a team that has the jobs are on the line. It's like he just dealt with that this year with the Jets. Like he knows what's going on. So I don't blame him. So now, first of all, I only said 30 minutes. It's almost 45. So I got one more question for you.
It's all good, man. I'm good.
But so if you had your dream draft for the Jets, the first 3 picks, the first 3 rounds, what would it be?
It would be Tyler Warren. I'm talking no trade backs or anything like that. Just sticking and picking. It would be Tyler Warren, it would probably be Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver out of Iowa State in round 2. And then the best tackle round 3, it could be, like I said, it could be Anthony Belton, could be Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College, who's a beast himself, 6'8", 330 pounds. Could be Jonas Avanea, who's another big guy out of Arizona. I'm comfortable with all those guys coming in. I think that all of them can start. I don't know if they're instant plug and play guys, but especially with Belton and Salvanea, I think that's good competition with Okafor. And if it doesn't work, then you have a backup that can play right tackle and left or right guard in year 1, and you have that pipeline done because Simpson, AVT, and Okafor are all on 1-year deals, right? So even if they're not starting year 1, I think they would all beat out Okafor. Even if they're not starting year 1, I think that at least you have a guy in there that can come in, in year 2 is going to be ready to play.
No, I agree with you. I saw like Javid's asking about defensive tackle. Javid, we're talking about like we have kind of the same vision, Dom and I, where it's like the first 3 picks should be offense based on all the needs they have, and like just having kind of faith in Steve Wilkes and Aaron Glenn to take care of the defense of what they have. Now, the one thing you mentioned, and this is what we get a lot all the time, is, well, bro, just trade back in the first round. Which we'll just do that because that's we're gonna press the button, we trade it back. We're now
you need 2 to tango, right? And this is just not a class. Like the one thing about this class, the juice, the meat and potatoes of this class happens between picks like 25 and 60. That's where the real value of this class is. It's not a top-heavy draft class, right? So if 2 quarterbacks are off the board, hypothetical, Shedeur and Cam Ward are off the board, and then Hunter and Travis Hunter, the from Colorado, and Abdul Carter from Penn State are going to be off the board. Who are people trading up for?
Yeah,
who are you trading up for? Are you trading up for Membo? You better really, really like Membo because there's tackles, that arguably some will say are as good as Membo that you can get in late round 1, so on and so forth. So why you just stay and why give up capital for it? I just don't know who people are trading up for. I think it's much more realistic, and I'd watch this. The Jets stick at 7 just because they're not going to have anybody that wants to come up unless you have like one of these little deals like, the Saints or something like that. But, maybe not. I think they could trade back from 42. Okay. I think that's where, you're going to be in day 2. I think we're in that heart of the value. I think there's going to be a lot more people that want to go up and get their guy in round 2. So I can see the Jets moving back, say, to the middle of the second round, gaining a 3rd or a 4th or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that's where I think that Muji's going to be able to move up and down the board a little bit.
It makes a lot more sense too. That's where there's a lot of wheel and deal. Joe Douglas used to always go back and get like 6 rounders, which was just great. We love that approach. Yeah. like what are we doing? We're going back again? Like, what is ridiculous? Yeah. So,
but to the D tackle thing, I want to. Javid, talked about D tackle. Listen, if you went D tackle, like I would get it. Like I said, there's not any position on the Jets right now that I wouldn't say that's a head scratcher. No, because you need depth all over the place. But they signed the kid Derek Noddy from Kansas City. He's much more of a run stuffer. He's much more of an early down guy. A good compliment to Quinnen, right? You assume that they're going to want to give Leonard Taylor some more run, especially in the pass downs, because that's where he's really effective, right? So can he take over the Solly Thomas role and be that backup to Quinnen at the 3 tech? And people forget we also signed Fedarius Mathis last year on the practice squad, who was a big lugging nose tackle that played next to Quinnen in college and was Washington, the Commanders' 2nd round pick just a couple years ago. They just cut bait on him. Different scheme, didn't fit. So you have 2 guys now in Fedarius Mathis and Derek Noddy who can really, play that 1 tech to that 2 gap and roll next to Quinnen on early downs. I don't know if the depth at defensive tackle is as desperate or is as bad as it is. I'm not saying that Derek Noddy and Fedarius Mathis, they won't make you not pick a defense tackle, but I don't know if you got to spend early capital on it. Right. Go get a guy in round 4. You know what I mean? Where there's still a really deep defensive line class, both at the edge and the tackle position. There's going to be so much good talent on the board, rounds 4 and 5. That's when I would address the defensive tackle, the edge, the safety room. All that stuff happens later.
Especially when you have a defensive-minded head coach and Steve Wilkes, where you're like, based on the coaching staff, how it's set up now, I'm like, all right, I have a little more faith on that side of the ball, getting the most out of the players than I do the unknown of the offense. So first of all, thank you for your time, bro. I was dying to talk to you because, like I said, like following you on Twitter or X is so much fun because you drop all kinds of insight and you don't regurgitate the same shit everybody else is saying. I hate that. Like, well, why do you like this? Well, so-and-so said so. Well, what do you think? Like, what's your reason why? It's like, I know enough to be dangerous, but I want to know what people that actually watch the tape do that. Now, how much time do you spend like evaluating prospects? You got to be getting those.
Man, Tyson, it's a sickness, dude. I started really, I watched, I can't even count how many hours, but I like I said, I have evaluation scouting reports, multiple games, not just one, multiple, at least on some of them only like 3 or 4, some of them a whole season. I'm pushing about 240 prospects right now.
Holy shit.
The past couple of years I've made my own draft guide. I just haven't published it because I'm only one guy, you know what I mean? So I'm working on getting that stuff tied in. So hopefully that's what, I can share kind of my bit of knowledge with, whoever wants to spend the $4 to see it. So yeah, I mean, hours and hours of tape. I start, well into July. Thank you, JoJo. I appreciate that, man.
So now, what's the best way for everybody to follow you? How can they check out your work?
Twitter? I'm really active on Twitter. I got my own little channel. I don't promote it much because I just don't spend a lot of time on it. But the next month or so will be pretty cool. I got some good, I got some good guests lined up. If you're into the draft stuff, I'll be doing some interviews with some actually, some prospects that are going to be in the class. I got one tomorrow lined up. I got some really good guests. I always, me and Blewett and another guy, Kai Samuels, who's a guy who's really, knee deep in this draft business, but was a Division I offensive tackle. So every year we always get together and talk offensive linemen, like 2 hours of just really getting in the weeds of the offensive linemen. So that's coming up early in April. So that my channel's Project Prospect with Dom C. I do a podcast on there. It's Draft Dodgers. Again, my fault, guys. I've been kind of all over the place, asked to do a lot more this year. I wrote for a scouting report for a publication that took up a lot more time than I expected. So you can always catch me there. You can catch me with the Talking Jets guys on Mondays. You can catch me with Green Bean on Thursdays, and probably dropping in with the real good content creators like yourself, Tyson, with all over the place over the next month, man. You'll see me a lot.
Yeah, no, dude, I definitely, like I said, I follow you. I watch. I really enjoy it, man. We talked like before this. I talked to you on Green Bean Show the one time. I'm like, oh shit, this guy's got like I love it. I love like insight. I love that like analysts that are Jet fans as well. So like, all right, you have like a vested interest because you want what's best for your team. Some analysts don't give a shit about your team. Like, oh yeah, just that guy works because I think, but you actually, you care because you want to see this team be good for once in 15 years.
Yeah. Listen, my whole goal was to really bring the thing. And listen, I went to scout school. I'm educated. Like I understand the nuts and bolts of how to watch and evaluate a prospect. Now it's all subjective. Everyone's eye is different. 100%. You know what I mean? But like my whole goal is to try to bring this stuff to the Jets community. Like I'm not a Jets content creator. I don't even know if I'm consider myself a content creator. I just want to be that guy that can bring some of this stuff to the Jets world. That's really what I'm out here doing, man.
No, it's phenomenal, dude. The only thing I ask is once the draft is over, you got to come back on, man, and talk about your evaluations of who the Jets got.
Oh, dude, anytime, hit me up, dude.
That'd be great. So make sure you guys follow him. Like I tell you, I do an excellent follow on Twitter and X. It's a lot of great insight, and I appreciate your time. I told you half hour, and I roped you into almost an hour. So
no, it's all good, dude. It's all good, man. Tyson.
Thank you guys for watching. Be live tomorrow night again, 8:00, and then that's it. Appreciate it. Enjoy your Sunday night, and we'll talk to you later.